So, full disclosure, I'm a very beginner at sewing. I've been teaching myself the notions, and so I know you will see a lot of mistakes in my video, and actually some of them I point out, but the point is this project is so easy that if I can do it, I think you will be fine. With that said, so I've been watching a lot of Downton for the past few months, like a lot. Like all of it. Of course, it's a great show, but also I am in love with the costumes like everybody else is, especially the 1920s costumes. I just can't get enough of them. But I was also very obsessed with the servants' costumes, the pinafores and aprons, and how even those change as time period changes from the early 1900s to the 1920s. And so it just got into my head that I really wanted to have my own pinafore apron that I could wear around the house, and I love that they actually cover most of what you're wearing, your dress. It was also an easy enough project that I could actually wing it by myself. I could just make it up as I went, which is what I did. By no means historically accurate, but definitely cute.
I made this apron out of linen, not quite white, more like a cream natural color. You could also use cotton. Remember to pre-wash your fabric as there will be some shrinkage. I got 2 yards, 54 inches wide. I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowances throughout this whole project. And after taking a bunch of measurements on myself, I decided for the following. So the skirt is 53 inches wide by 24 inches long, plus 3 inches to create that hem. You can make it longer if you want it to be longer. The waistband is 4 inches wide and 25 inches long. I made it a little bit smaller than my waist, but you can make it longer. And then for the ties, they are 4 inches wide and 20 inches long, and the straps are 3.5 inches wide, 26 inches long. Bib is 7.5 inches wide plus 1 inch on each side, so it's 9.5 inches wide total, and 10.5 inches long plus 2 inches at the top for the hem, so 12.5 inches. You can see here more or less how I arranged them on the linen, and I had a lot of fabric left, so I'll have to figure out what to do with it. Anyway, I started with the skirt, folding and pressing the 3-inch hem and the seam allowance inward, and then sew it in place. Then I rolled in the hems on both of the sides of the skirt and pressed them and sew them in place. At the other end of the skirt, I created some gathering. This is only the second time or so I do gathering, so I found that it's not really hard to do. I set my sewing machine at the longest stitch possible, and then I sew 2 rows at the top of the skirt, trying to stay within the seam allowance and leaving long tails of thread at the end. Then I pull the thread little by little to gather the skirt. I tried gathering it all together as much as possible and then arrange the gathers along the length of the waistband as evenly as possible. Now here's what I made a bad decision that I think if I made this again I would do it differently. I think I should have sewn the 2 ties on either side of the waistband first before sewing it into the skirt, but I didn't do that because I wasn't thinking, or I guess I was impatient, and the way I ended up doing it didn't turn out as nice. So if you're making this, I recommend you do that before the next step. Just sew in the long ties onto the waistband. Once I was satisfied with the gather, I pinned the waistband to the skirt right sides together, making sure the middle was lined up and the sides were too. And then I sew it in. Then I folded the waistband and pressed it, folding in the sewing allowance. And if you have the ties, you would be pressing them to here. But you will see I do this later when I attach it. And then you sew this in place. At this point, you should have a skirt for the apron. And you even should have the ties, not like me, who I didn't do it. And it already looks like something. You could even just keep it like this. It's cute as it is. But you can also go ahead and continue with the bib part. Let's begin with the straps. I simply press them in half, right sides together, and I sew them in place. Then I cut the seam allowance down and pull those inside out. So I could press them again, and my ties are ready. For the bib, I started with the hem at the top, pressing it down the seam allowance, and then pressing it once more, 2 inches down, and I pinned it into place, pinning the straps I created earlier as well, leaving about 1 inch on each side so that can be rolled in too. Then I sew everything in place by top stitching that hem. Then I rolled in the side hem as well. And I sew it into place. And then I also pinned that bib onto the skirt in the middle so that I could top stitch the apron together, so that I could top stitch the bib in place, and at the same time I top stitched all the ties that I hadn't done yet so that it would be all together. The last thing I did, which I did not record, was the buttons. So I sewed buttons to the end of the straps, and then I created buttonholes on the back of the apron so that they can be crossed behind. But if you don't want to, or you don't know how to do buttonholes, you can just sew those straps into place to the back of the apron. And that's it. You should have an apron by now.
So that is all. I hope this was a useful project. I can't wait to see what you guys make, and happy sewing!